Okay, friends, we got one more story for this week. We looked at a story on forgiveness, we looked at a story on how to live the good life, and today we're going to look at a story on fairness. It's like the first one we looked at this week. It's a parable. It's a story that Jesus tells in order to illustrate a larger point. And it is a story about what it looks like to live in the kingdom of God in the present, what it looks like to be men and women and teenagers and kids who are stepping more fully into living in the light of God's reign. In the midst of a world that's going to push us in all kinds of different directions, is showing us what it looks like to truly position ourselves where He is the King and where we are trying to live in light of His goodness, of His leading, all those things. What does it look like to live as people in the kingdom? The beginning of chapter 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. So this is the setting. You've got a master. He owns a vineyard. He's going to hire laborers. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, it's about a day's wage, he sent them into his village. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. The third hour is going to be about 9 a.m. And he said to them, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right, I'll give you." So he hires some more a few hours later. So they went, but they didn't agree on a price. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. So about noon and about 3 o'clock, does the same thing. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" So at the very end of the day, he goes out and he finds even more laborers. So he's gotten some early in the morning, he's gotten some at 9, he's gotten some at noon, he's gotten some at 3, and then here at the end of the day, for a 5th time, he goes out and he finds more people who aren't working, and he says to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day? Why hadn't you been doing anything?" They said to him, "Because no one's hired us. We haven't been able to find a job." And he said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." It's right at the end of the day. There's just a little bit of work left. You go in also. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." So how many groups are there? There are 5 groups of laborers that all worked different amounts of time. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Okay? So remember, the people who were there from the very beginning were promised a denarius. They're the only people who were told what their wage would be. These people who came at the 11th hour, they've got to be shocked. I get a whole day's wage for just a little bit of work that I did. They received a denarius. Now, when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, right? It doesn't tell us about groups 2, 3, and 4, but presumably they're thinking the same thing also. These people who just worked a little bit, they got a whole denarius? Well, what am I going to get? Each of those groups, well, they just get a denarius also. And then with this first group, each of them also received a denarius. As I say that, we actually don't know it. Maybe 2, 3, and 4 did receive more. It doesn't actually tell us that. But what we know is that the people who worked just a little bit and the people who worked all day received the same wage. Can you imagine what those people that worked all day felt? Now, keep in mind, it's what they agreed to. It's what was actually fair. It's what the owner told him he would pay them. But when they saw how much the others got, they just assumed that they would get more. And all of a sudden, their denarius, it doesn't feel as weighty as it did when they agreed to it that morning. In their minds, they had told themselves they'd get much more. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." I love that line. You've made them equal to us. How dare you say that we're equal? We worked all day. They worked a little bit, and yet you've made us equal in your eyes. But he replied to them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Hey, what wrong have I done you? Did you not agree with me for denarius? My friend, look, why are we even talking about them? I haven't done you any wrong. Hey, you're comparing what I'm giving you to what I'm giving them, but let's just talk about me and you here for a second, buddy. Like, this is what we agreed to. Take what belongs to you and go. Take your money and get out of here. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Look, I chose to do this. I'm choosing to give those 11th hour folks the same thing that I gave to you. What's it to you? You're getting your stuff. Why would you assume you're going to get more stuff because they got the same as you? Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Do you think that you should be able to decide what I do with my money? I get to decide what I do with my money. And then the line that I just love. Or do you begrudge my generosity? Do you begrudge my generosity? What's another translation that I've heard? Are you envious because I'm generous? Did that have a nice ring to it? Are you envious because I'm generous? Do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first and the first will be last. It's one of the major themes here. The last will be first and the first will be last. So what's it like in the kingdom? Well, the kingdom is as if some people come in and they get to know, let's talk about them first. They get to know Jesus early on. Some of the first people to follow him around. And some people have just recently gotten to know him, walking in his way. And some people don't yet, but they're going to be coming in. They're going to get in even later than the people that just did. Are you finding yourself thinking, he might be saying to his disciples, are you finding yourself thinking that just because you got in on this deal early, that you are entitled to more than those who are getting into this deal now? I mean, look, what I am promising you, like the abundant life, like the life that is really living, like the fullness of life and eternal life, like in not just the quantity, but not just the quality, but the quantity of life also. Like, do you not see how great that is? And are you then envious because I'm generous and offering that to people who are coming late to the party also? And then taking it to us today. Are we not at times envious because he's generous? I mean, are we at times proud of ourselves for how well and for how long we've been living well? Like how well we follow Jesus and how long we've been doing it? And do we begrudge sometimes? The reality is that if people at the very end of their lives come to know him, that they receive the same reward. Can we begrudge that in some ways? I think most of us probably don't. Most of us probably recognize that it's good for people to come to know Jesus, even at the end of their lives. But what this points us towards and challenges us towards, I think, is the tendency that we have sometimes to think that we are entitled to certain things from God because of what we do. The reality is that the grace that's his to give, the salvation that's his to give, he can do whatever he wants to with it. And as he has promised to us who are already laboring in the vineyard, he's also promising it to anybody else who wants to jump in at any time. So let me ask you, who do you know that's out there that's been standing idly by all day? It's verse 6. It's been standing idly by. That's not yet working in the vineyard. Might it be time to invite them to come in and work with you, knowing that you're not getting any extra reward for the last 20 years where you've been working and they've been partying. You're not getting anything extra for that. But do you want them to come on into the vineyard also, to receive the goodness of life that you're receiving? I love this story because it paints a picture of what God's grace looks like. It's not based on how long we've been doing this, but it's based on the fact that we have accepted Christ's invitation into the vineyard to be co-workers alongside of him, to receive salvation through him, and to begin to live in the abundant life now. The timing of this is important. This is right before they're getting ready to step into Jerusalem. And I think a large part of what is happening is that Jesus is preparing them to get into Jerusalem with people that they don't know, people that are different from them. All these are Galileans living up north. And there's going to be a temptation for them to begin thinking like, we've been with Jesus all along. We've got all of this figured out. And the reality is that Jesus wants to bring the people of Jerusalem to himself also. And it's almost as if it is a warning sign to them, saying, before we walk in to this new region, I want you to be looking for other people to invite in. And when they get in and get the same reward as you, check yourself. Are you going to be happy that they got invited to the party? Or are you going to be jealous that they're wearing the same party hat you are? So for you, who is it that you're inviting in? Okay, next week we're going to keep going, and I think next week we get into Jerusalem. We do. Next week we get into Jerusalem, kind of midway through the week, which is the last setting for Jesus' ministry, and we'll talk a little bit about that next week. God bless you, friends, and I'll see you then.